What's up, guys? Nice to see y'all again. I am here working on brake lines. So I've got some fittings. The light is not great. I got some fittings. They're the right size for what I'm working on. But you gotta have a special tool to flare these brake lines, alright guys? I do not have that tool to create, see that little flare? You gotta have a tool to do that. I do not have the tool, so I'm going to make a tool and do it by hand. Alright. So, I've got this brake line on with a homemade flare. I've been chopping up different lines in different pieces, trying to get a good flare. This is a factory flare. So what I did was I cleaned that off. Took a Harbor Freight number 1 or 2 Phillips, ground it into a giant pick, heated up the tip a little bit, not to where it was red hot, but just a little bit, and then slightly tapped it in, and it expanded the line. Now I don't have anything to double flare it, which I guess I could put something like a socket over it once it's flared, but I was worried about it breaking because I was using old lines. So it is got a single flare on it, which is probably going to leak, and we'll end up having to change that. But since I'm doing this on an extreme budget, that's kind of where we stand. It'll have to be a placeholder until we can figure out if I want to spend the money on new brake lines or not. So right now I'm going to work on getting fuel line in and getting a battery in so I can get this thing test fired. I also need to fill the transmission up with fluid, but the pan has a hole in it. I don't remember if you go back 3 or 4 videos to where I was making the transmission mount, I accidentally slipped with the grinder and cut a tiny little slit in the bottom of the pan. So you can already guess what my plan is for that. There's brake line everywhere. But yeah, you can guess what my plan is. Yes, it does involve welding. Transmission fluid is extremely flammable. Burns very easily. So I don't know how successful we're going to be without taking the pan off. I'm going to try not to take the pan off. But I also need to start thinking about some sort of shifter and dash so I can hook all the switches up, because this is our switch panel that turns our main power on, our fan on, our fuel pump on, and then has our start button. So we have to wire all that up to this EFI setup. I was going to wire some of the old gauges in to use, but I don't think I'm going to just yet. Mainly because then I have to find out how to run an oil line, how to run a coolant line, and stuff like that for the temperature sensors for the analog gauges. And I just don't think that that's not a real priority before June 18th. And today is Friday the 19th, so we have a month to do everything on this car still. And I have a list. My workbench is destroyed. There's just stuff everywhere. So let's see what we have here. My camera will not focus. Front suspension, steering, we kind of got that sorted out. It needs an alignment. Exhaust, we've got that finished. Brakes, by the way, I did not spell that. My wife spelled brakes wrong. We're kind of working on that. Gauges, we're going to figure that out. I don't know what that is. Cockpit, pretty much everything. Switch panel, floors, shifters. Drive shaft we've got done. Body panels are out back, ready to be screwed on. I don't know what that says. New back axle. Yeah, we're not doing that. 4-link mounts are done. Wiring for switch panel. That's what we're gonna hopefully get at today between the fuel lines and the switch panel. Come on, camera. I don't know. We also still need a drive shaft. That one is too short by just a little bit. So that's probably going to entail me and my buddies getting a piece of 2.5-inch pipe, you know, something strong like Schedule 60, sleeving it and making it longer by 1/2 inch. They're not as into that idea, I think, as I am. But for one, we're not worried about it being balanced. And two, this thing doesn't make enough power to snap a drive shaft in half. So I don't think we have a whole lot to worry about as far as that goes. So I guess I need to gather up some stuff. The brake line, that's going to be kind of a placeholder for now. Right here. Just to kind of see where we're going. We'll put brake fluid in it and hit the pedal, but the problem is the lines from here to the calipers are not hooked up. They are on the bench. And only one of the backs is hooked up, and I think it has a hole in it. So it's we're kind of scrounging here. I don't think we're going to make the race, but I'm trying to be optimistic about it and trying to stay out here and work. But I don't know. So let me grab some fuel line and gather some stuff up, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do. Alright guys, found some tubing, fuel line, that we're going to try and use to hardline a lot of what is kind of sketchy, if you will. Just because it'll be around moving parts like drive shaft and stuff like that. You don't want to rubber line all the way if you can help it, just because, especially if you're doing off-road stuff, rocks or tree limbs or whatever you happen to come across will get caught up in the frame, grab that rubber and pull it down. So you want something like this, at least in the middle section of the vehicle. Up around the fronts, not so much. And around up where it goes to the fuel cell, you don't really need a whole bunch of hard line. We may put some there just for safety's sake. But this piece is going to be our main piece going underneath the car about where the drivetrain is going to be. And I don't want a rubber hose that could, if the drive shaft breaks, get wrapped up and, you know, stuff like that. So we're going to snug this up real close to the frame. And this is line that has already been bent several times. If you can tell. So what I'm doing is I'm putting it in the vise and one section at a time, just barely tightening it down. I'm not going crazy. I'm just snugging the vise up to go from something like that to a little bit straighter. It's not a whole lot straighter, But it'll just keep us from putting kinks in it when we bend it. May make it worse, I don't know. Probably should have just gone and got new fuel line. But sticking with the theme of the car and this, I guess, YouTube series you would call it, is doing everything on the cheap. Because a lot of people get the impression that you can't go racing if you don't have a whole bunch of money. Which is true. You can't do a whole lot of racing without a whole lot of money. Without some money. The entry fee that I'm going to have to, look at that I'm going to have to pay to get into this event is probably going to cost more than I have spent building this rendition of the car. So keep that in mind. We repurposed the engine, we repurposed the axle, we repurposed the four-link, the radiator. Everything is repurposed scrap metal. In fact, I don't think there's a single new part on this variation of the car. The last rendition of the car, 1.0, it was all new. Everything. Distributor, water, like literally everything on the car was brand new because I bought it as a roller, nothing in it. This rendition is a little different though. And that's what I'm like. I know people like to have nice things. Everybody wants to have nice stuff, okay? I get that. Everybody wants to have nice, flashy, new, clean. Here's the thing. Would you rather have nice and new, but have to wait 4 or 5 years for it? Or would you rather have dirty and homemade now, and you get to go racing with your buddies and have fun now, and then slowly upgrade your way into nice and new over a 4-year span? That's kind of how I think. Could I have taken my sweet time and made this thing a lot nicer? Yeah. Could we have picked up an LS motor, and made a ton of power and, a whole 4-link kit and this, that? Yeah, we could have. But that's not what this is about. I have the money to do these things, but I don't like spending the money to do these things because it allows me to spend money on other things, like going on vacation and renovating my toy hauler and doing other things that I like to do other than just dump all my money into this one thing. If I save money on this one thing, I get to do a lot of other stuff, a lot of other things in life. So there's like a give and take, and car guys tend to forget that, especially guys that are just getting into cars because they see all these like nice new cars. They're like, oh man, I want one of these. No, this thing right here, I will have more fun driving this around the track even if it blows up. When this car originally blew up a couple months ago, I think I made like 6 laps, and I had the day of my life, the best day I've had in the past year. And we're talking like I've had some pretty high moments to where like I got shot in the face and lived. I got out of the hospital pretty quick. I bought a new car. You know what I mean? I've bought all kinds of toys. I built a monster truck, a literal monster truck, and side by sides and rock crawling jeeps and stuff. But that day right there, when I completely scattered my motor, was the best day ever. Just because I was out there with my buddies, we were grilling and cooking out, and all our family was there. We were having a good time, laughing. So yeah, think about that. All right, enough of my rant. I'll probably end up editing that part out. Alright, so I need to get a better tripod situation going on here. That way I can prop you guys up better. See if I can use this welding wire. Welding wire and a stack of cutoff wheels. Alright, so this part we're gonna hold on to that. We got a couple other pieces of hardline here that we need to at least wipe off. Oh, it is filthy. It came off my drag truck, my S10. So it's got all kinds of goo on the bottom of it from years of being under there. Ugh. Thinking about starting a gaming channel too, guys. Which seems to be the nerdy millennial 30-year-old like thing to do. But at the end of the day, when I'm not doing this, I sit inside and watch TV with my wife, or I play a little bit of Call of Duty or something like that with my lifelong childhood friends. Which is kind of nice because on one hand you're like, oh man, I can't believe you're playing video games, but at the same time I'm getting to do something with my lifelong buddies. See how, alright, y'all see this? See how that's like way beyond 90. That's about a 90-ish. We're going to make that completely dead straight, I think. So again, we're going to open the vise up pretty aggressively. And we're going to get it in there and kind of pull the stank on that one. Then get a little, oh, see that slipped? Okay, do a little bump. You don't want to go too far. Let's see if we can straighten that out first. I think that'll help us. You gotta be careful when you do the ends though, because it will crimp them shut. You can't just crank on it because it will just flatten it shut, and then you're cutting it shorter. So like that. See? That's what I'm talking about right there. Now I'm going to have to cut that back here to get it right. Which isn't a big deal, but when you're repurposing stuff and reusing stuff, and you only have a limited quantity of that stuff, you don't want to do that. Alright, so the main thing is you want to get it to where it's going to be, and then it's going to want to roll to the easiest, like, flat that it wants to. Like, it's going to want to twist. If I let go of this, it'll just turn down. So I'm kind of giving it an upward kind of tug here, if you can notice. Then I'm going to do a little push out. Then I'm going to move it a little further in. We'll push out, a little further in. We'll push. We'll push. That kinked. Yep, that kinked. I don't know where my camera's at. See that? Right there. That's what we were trying to avoid. I put too much on that. So we'll probably just end up cutting this whole section off, which is not what we want to do, but we can still use this 90 right here. Alright, so yeah, that's got a nice curve in it. We're going to try and straighten that out without kinking it. The last one I managed to do off camera, or mostly off camera, I didn't kink it at all. As soon as I turn the camera on. Look at that. Shoo, that's pretty straight. Now, I don't know where we're going to put that section. We've got a couple other sections here. Some that have been pieced together before. I don't know how I feel about that. We're gonna try and straighten that out, but I should also state where you pull from matters. If you pull from real far down the line, it will 100% goof up. Alright. I'm not ignoring you guys, I'm just trying to find my tools. You see these little hose clamps there. They're valuable. So I don't like that end. Ideally, you want to flare these a little bit too before you go slide another fuel line on, clamp it on. That way it doesn't just pull it off. Especially if you're using a high pressure system. We're not, so I'm not overly concerned about that. Make y'all seasick. Can't find a good spot to sit, y'all. That'll work. I had this little piece of line on here. I don't like it. Put a little bending that guy. Because we're going to try and get it to follow it down. Come on. That fit pretty good. Come on. I don't like this tool. I keep that shed for lighting reasons and for heat reasons. Like I said before, my AC does not work super well in here, especially when the door is wide open. There's still a lot of air that can escape from the sides, but it's better than nothing. That's better. Cut the finger open. So my whole goal here was to get this curve to kind of follow that harness right there. See, I got it curved, and it kind of turns down right there. I want that hard bend to turn down. That way I can go over, because the fuel line coming from the tank is on that side of the car, whereas the inlet for the rail is on this side of the car. So we kind of got to do a little dance here to make it happen. See, now we can take a soft piece and kind of loop it down that way. We'll test it here. Like that. I don't know how I like the fuel lines and the battery cables being so close together, but I mean, realistically, the chances of that going wrong are pretty slim. That and it's the starter wire, so it's not like it's, you know, a main power wire. This piece is the piece I want to run back there. Then we've got this piece that we can run off the transmission and down over top of the transmission. Ideally, you wouldn't want anything around the transmission like that, but once again, it's just the name of the game, yo. See, there's our line right there. We can get that to there, and then we'll bring it down like that. It's not great, man, but it's pretty much all we have to work with in terms of what we're gonna be able to achieve in a short amount of time before we have to go racing. So, yeah, I don't know. The more I look at it, the more I don't like it, guys. But again, realistically, in this situation, with, you know, what are you going to do? WD-40. Help our lines slide together. Oh, don't look at my butt. You know what, in fact, I'm going to turn that just so we don't make this awkward. That's not happy. Nope. We may have to find a different piece of line to connect those. Not ideal. I'm happy with that. Woo! Put a little clampy on this one, just because I don't want it to move. While we're struggling with the other one. I also noticed the steering shaft is hitting the brake booster. So we're going to have to come up with something for that. Which it's got an adjustable steering column in it, so we might be able to lower it down to where it won't do that. Similar to that right there. Alright, it's not bad. Let a lot of our air out here. See, our line comes out of here, which isn't a big deal. I don't know. I gotta get a better tripod set up, y'all. Alright, so right through here is where I kind of want my hard line. Now it's not going to be 100% hard line all the way across here, but it's going to be 90% hard line right here, which is going to give us a lot higher chance of not destroying the fuel line if we break drive line. So I might make our bracket to be right there, or we might use that bracket. That's what we'll do. Alright, so let me get my cutters. Alright, so let me grab some zip tape. We'll leave that. Put that right there. So, see, this is the lines I was telling you all about. I'm not hooking up. There. Put it on here first. Which means see, this is why I haven't really worried about putting floors in yet. Because there's a lot of stuff under the car that needs to be done. It's a lot easier to do. You don't have floors to work around. You can just see straight to the frame. The other day I was going to put a firewall in here and a dash. And I was like, well, I need to get under there to zip tie wiring and stuff, so it's just going to make it more difficult on me. When I put fuel line on like this, guys, I like to make sure it gets at least like half an inch up in there. I'm trying to bend this piece right here. I want to use, there's a bracket right here on the transmission that I would like to use to hold this fuel line. Best way to do that is with a cable tie. So now we can trim some more off now that we've got a rough idea of where we want to be. Oh, but not the camera. Sit your, whoa. Right there. So now, the other upside about using hardline is you can really cinch it down without bending it or crimping it, closing it off. Rubber line, you got to be careful when you do that. I'm gonna leave that one a little loose because we still got to put a hose clamp on that end. Alright, so now, if we look, we got our fuel line that follows the frame from the filter right here. It comes down the frame rail. We'll have to get it tucked up in the corner a little nicer. Comes, this is an awkward, you know what, we're gonna just avoid that situation altogether. Right here, we got our hard line. That way, if we have a drive shaft problem, we ain't got to worry about it. I mean, there would be a drive shaft loop anyway, but still, assuming something else gets up in here and gets caught. We've got a nice piece of hard line here, and it doesn't actually get rubber until past the transmission joint right here, and then goes up with a nice, well, nice-ish contoured bend over the transmission, and then up to where we ran those lines up in there. We're going to kind of move it a little ways like that, maybe, just to keep it in line with that, which we're actually going to go do now. Get our zip ties here. What's that? Starter wire. Alright, so try and keep this nice and neat. A little bit of cable tie action here. Now comes out of our fuel line for our rail, comes across the back here. See this? We used the hard line 90 to go down, goes through the rubber line, and then back to our situation there. You in there, Fred? Let's see if I can get my camera up on there. I don't know if you can see anything in there, but there's eggs in there. So keep some of our air in. Can't squat on this tire. So in just that short amount of time, we managed to get a little bit of brake line run, be it temporary or not. Fuel line is done. Just got to put hose clamps on, and I would consider that done. Ready to put fuel in and fire. I don't know what time it is. It's my phone. So it is 3:10. We managed to get our fuel lines run, which is pretty much one of the last steps we need to get it running. The last step is mounting the battery and making battery cables. And putting the switch panel in for the main kill and stuff like that. Main on-off switch, fuel pump on-off, because we still have to wire that fuel pump, and then we need to put in starter button and fan for our electric fan. Now we can't drive it yet because we don't have floors. Our brakes probably are not going to work, and we still have to finish the front part of the brakes where it connects the caliper to the proportioning valve, which we had lines somewhere. I don't know where they went. But we also have a couple grounds to hook up. So, just like with the fuel line, I'm going to cut it right here, and then I'm going to grab the stuff we need to figure out where we're going to put a battery, and where our battery cables need to route to go to our fuse panel to run main power. And after we do that, we'll see. I may scratch it all together, get some aluminum out of the trailer, and bend us a dash so we can actually start hooking up stuff. But we don't have a floor to work off of, so that's a problem. This week coming up, I'm going to have to go get some steel, I think. If I can go this weekend and get the steel from the steel yard and get maybe some new brake line and a transmission, 2 transmission fittings, we could have this thing done, or at least done enough to take it over to the High Springs race shop owned by my buddy, which is where we finished the car off last time. The day before the race, we were there until dark, just jamming away on it, welding in stuff, and I was completely unprepared last time. I feel bad because those guys had to stay late and do a lot of work for free. So I don't want to do that to them again, but I'm not going to say that it's not going to be a possibility, because I do have the other window net for the passenger side that does need to go in. I still don't have harnesses. I only have one seat. My buddy has the other seat that I think we're going to end up using, because he's probably going to end up being my co-driver. So I'm going to get a thinner seat, and the seat that I was using is a little bit too wide for me, but it's perfect for him, because he's a bigger dude. So we'll probably put that in the passenger side, and then we'll have our 2 seats, window nets, and everything we need. So yeah, let me gather up some stuff, figure out what we're going to do, and then we'll truck on.